Simon, Canadian farmers understand what it's like to go through droughts, bad crop seasons, bad cattle seasons. Give our viewers back home an idea of how bad the situation is in Somalia.
The situation is quite bad. If it had rained in October, November, we would have been okay. But it has failed to rain. And so what has happened is that the number of people in crisis has now increased. We are talking of about 2.9 million people who are in need of immediate food assistance. We are talking of 363,000 children who are acutely malnourished. And we are talking of 71,000 children who are severely malnourished and at risk of death. That is how critical a failed rainy season, and in this case too, means to the people of Somalia.
When we think of drought and famine, I mean, Canadians are thinking about 2011. That's the last time we had a chance to respond. How does this one compare?
It's worse. When you look at the vegetation maps, we did a comparison of the vegetation maps, the satellite vegetation maps in 2011 and the satellite vegetation maps right now. The vegetation is in far worse condition. It is a lot more depleted than it was in 2011, which shows the severity of the drought. When we look at the numbers, in 2011 we lost 263,000 people. If we don't intervene now, we are looking at a possibility of 430,000 deaths.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know that in the last famine that the half of the victims were very young children. I mean, how do we prevent that specifically for the young children for this not to happen again?
Yeah, there are 3 stages of malnutrition. And let's try to bring this to life. So try to imagine a mother who has 3, 4, 5 children, and the average family size in Somalia is about 5 children. Her crops fail, her animals die, and when the animals die, she does not have milk for her children. She cannot sell the animals in the market for food or for cash. And so the first day, her children go hungry. The second day, her children are going hungry. They don't have anything to eat. And you know children, when they are full and they are okay, they will go out and play and help around the household. But then when they don't have food, they will just lie there and they will be listless and they will be crying. And the third day comes and the fourth day comes. And this lady has been all over the place trying to talk to her neighbors, get assistance, but her neighbors are in the same condition, so she doesn't get any assistance from her neighbors. And one of the youngest children now becomes moderately malnourished. And so she presents that child to a health clinic. Now, if that health clinic has nutritional supplements, then that child's life will be saved. But if there is no assistance coming in, then that child will slip in from moderate to acute malnutrition first, and then from acute malnutrition to severe malnutrition. And so what we need to do right now is to provide immediate food assistance to the 2.9 million people that are affected so that their children do not go through those stages of malnutrition. Through the very generous support of both private and government donors, we have been able to keep 73,000 children alive by providing nutritional supplements to them when they come and when we notice that they have any form of malnutrition. We have been tracking water into villages, and water is particularly important in terms of making sure that women do not walk longer distances in their weekend condition looking for water, and that when they have water, then they are able to better take care of their children. We have been doing village savings, as I said, where we get women to save money, and from these village savings, the women groups that we have been working with have been providing assistance, providing resources to other women who do not have food in order to enable them to buy food.
Simon, I want to ask about, the Horn of Africa, specifically Somalia. It is prone to drought. We saw that in the 90s. Of course, 2011 was devastating. Why isn't there more resilience for this country that is prone to this problem?
Two things, climate change and conflict. Now, climate change is a fact. I think people who study these things have said the earth is warming up. I think for you people in Canada, that might be good news, because if you're having negative 40 degrees Celsius temperatures, a little warming up will do you a lot of good.
That's right.
But for people in areas that experience hot climates, warming up is not good news, because what that means then is that whenever it rains and it is hot, the water is taken away very fast from the crops, from the shrubs, from the fodder, and they dry up. And once they dry up, as you saw while you are up in Somaliland and Somalia, the people are dependent on their animals. So the animals don't have enough food to eat, and that begins this unfortunate chain of events that leads to children's death. And conflict, especially Western Somalia has been in conflict for the last 25 years. What conflict does is that it displaces people. People cannot stay on their land, or they cannot graze their animals freely. They are pushed into internally displaced people's camps, and they do not have the means to provide for themselves. And Somalia has 1.1 million people who are internally displaced by the conflict, and also internally displaced from their original homelands by drought. And so when you put those two together, then it erodes the resiliency of people and their ability to bounce back.
I want to ask about the word famine, because it seems like when that word is dropped, the international community responds. Why aren't we calling this earlier then, if we know we're headed down that path?
No, and that is where we are calling it early. And the reason we are calling it early is because we know for sure. We normally say in our work that when you see animals begin to die because of drought, then children are going to follow. We are sure, we are very certain that 1 month, 2 months, actually weeks down this path, then we are going to begin to lose children. And unfortunately, the youngest and the most vulnerable from the poorest of families are the first ones who die, because they don't have any resources to keep them alive.